It is better to be feared than loved. With a single sentence like this, Niccolò Machiavelli secured his place in history as the whisperer of tyrants. His book, The Prince, was banned by the church, yet secretly studied by kings, popes, and dictators for over 5 centuries. It became the most infamous manual ever written on how to gain and preserve power at any cost. But was Machiavelli truly a monster? Or was he something far more unsettling, a ruthless realist, a political physician who believed that to save a nation drowning in chaos, one must sometimes prescribe poison? Today, we place Machiavelli on trial before Stoic philosophy, not with modern sentimental morality, but with the cold, unforgiving standard of Stoic virtue. The question is not whether his methods work. The question is what they do to the soul of the one who uses them. Here, at the Stoic Lighthouse, we do not search for shortcuts or comforting illusions. We seek clarity, direction, and inner steadiness in a chaotic world. In this trial, we will examine where Machiavelli's realism unexpectedly aligns with Stoic thought, and where it becomes its complete opposite. And by the end, you will face a choice that goes far beyond politics, a choice between 2 radically different kinds of power. Number 1, seeing the world as it truly is. Machiavelli's first and strongest argument is not cruelty, it is honesty. He refused to describe the world as it should be. He described it as it is. While earlier thinkers built ideal republics in their imagination, Machiavelli watched rulers fall, alliances collapse, and crowds turn overnight. What he saw was not virtue by default, but self-interest, fear, and ambition. In The Prince, he wrote, "Men in general are ungrateful, fickle, deceptive, cowardly in the face of danger, and greedy for gain." To many, this sentence sounds like proof of moral corruption. But from a Stoic perspective, it reveals something uncomfortable yet familiar: realism. Stoicism has never been a philosophy of wishful thinking. It begins by stripping reality of illusion. Epictetus, who had no romantic illusions about human nature either, taught the same discipline of perception. Do not seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do happen, and your life will go smoothly. Both Machiavelli and Epictetus demand the same first step: stop fighting reality. See people as they are, not as you hope they might be. False expectations are the birthplace of resentment and poor judgment. If this way of seeing human nature already feels uncomfortable but clarifying, it may be because you are not looking for comforting ideas, but for truth. This space exists for those who prefer clarity. Modern thinkers echo this idea. Robert Greene, often labeled a contemporary Machiavellian, builds his work on radical realism. He argues, most of our pain and failures come from our illusions about human nature. Learning to see people as they are, not as we want them to be, is the most fundamental skill for power and wisdom. Machiavelli was not celebrating human ugliness. He was diagnosing it. Like a physician, he believed that treatment begins only after an accurate diagnosis, no matter how unpleasant it may be. On this point, Stoicism and Machiavelli stand on the same ground. Both insist on clear sight. Both reject comforting fantasies. The difference, which will soon become impossible to ignore, lies not in how they see the world, but in what they choose to do after seeing it clearly. Number 2. Against fortune, preparing for chaos. Machiavelli lived in a world where stability was an illusion. Alliances shifted overnight. Rulers rose and fell without warning. Fortune, as he called it, could elevate a man to power one day and drag him into exile or execution the next. He did not theorize about this chaos. He survived it. From that experience, Machiavelli developed one of his most enduring ideas. Fortune governs part of human life, but never all of it. The rest belongs to Virtù, the capacity to act decisively, to anticipate danger, and to prepare before disaster strikes. To explain this, he used a striking metaphor. Machiavelli wrote, "I compare fortune to a violent river which, when it floods, sweeps away trees and buildings. Yet this does not mean that men, when times are calm, cannot take precautions by building dikes and embankments." The wise ruler in Machiavelli's view is not the one who reacts best in crisis, but the one who prepares long before the flood arrives. Peace is not a time for rest. It is a time for construction. Here, Stoicism unexpectedly echoes his logic. Seneca, who lived under emperors whose favor could turn into death sentences overnight, taught the same discipline of anticipation. He warned, "He robs future troubles of their power who has anticipated their coming. Nothing is crushing if it arrives unexpectedly." This is the Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, the deliberate contemplation of worst-case scenarios, not to induce fear but to dissolve it. What is rehearsed mentally loses its power when it appears in reality. Modern thinkers reinforce this convergence. Nassim Nicholas Taleb, who studies randomness and collapse, explains, "Robustness comes not from predicting the future, but from preparing for a future that is fundamentally unpredictable." Both the Stoic and the Machiavellian reject naive optimism. They do not hope fortune will be kind. They assume it will be hostile, and because of that assumption, they build strength in advance. At this level, the philosophies still walk side by side. Both understand that resilience is not luck, it is design. The difference, still subtle, lies in what is being protected. For Machiavelli, preparation serves the survival of power and the state. For the Stoic, preparation serves the stability of the soul. The same storm, the same preparation, two very different things standing behind the walls. Number 3, the state above the individual. Machiavelli's philosophy becomes truly disturbing only when we ask one question: why did he justify cruelty, deception, and betrayal? His answer was not personal ambition, it was the survival of the state. The Prince was written for a fractured Italy, humiliated by foreign powers and torn apart by internal weakness. Machiavelli believed that peace, stability, and national survival demanded a leader willing to sacrifice personal morality for collective security. In this framework, the ruler's duty does not stop at his own conscience, it rises above it. Although the phrase is not his own, it captures his logic perfectly. The ends justify the means. When the survival of the state is at stake, moral purity becomes a liability. A leader who clings to idealism while his country collapses is not virtuous. He is irresponsible. This idea has a distant but undeniable echo in Stoic thought. Stoicism teaches officium, duty toward the community. The Stoic does not live for himself alone. He belongs to a larger whole, like a limb to a body. Marcus Aurelios, who ruled an empire under constant threat, understood this responsibility. He reminded himself, "What is not good for the hive is not good for the bee." Here, Machiavelli and Stoicism appear to briefly touch. Both recognize that leadership involves sacrifice. Both reject selfish indulgence. Both demand that the individual serve something larger than himself. But the similarity ends the moment we define what good means. For Marcus Aurelios, the good of the hive included justice, restraint, and moral integrity. For Machiavelli, the supreme good was survival itself, even if it required injustice, cruelty, or betrayal. Modern strategic thinkers echo Machiavelli's cold realism. Military historian Edward Luttwak argues, "In geopolitics, the morality of intentions is irrelevant. What matters are consequences." A leader who allows his state to be destroyed out of excessive scruples commits the gravest moral failure of all. Machiavelli wrote from a world on fire. He believed applying philosophical virtue to politics was like bringing prayers to a knife fight. In his eyes, the greatest immorality was weakness that invited destruction. This is where the fault line begins to crack open. Stoicism insists that virtue defines the good. Machiavelli insists that survival defines it. Both claim to serve the common good. Only one refuses to sacrifice the soul in the process. Number 4. Virtù versus virtue, the corruption of the ideal. This is where the trial truly turns. Until now, Machiavelli and Stoicism seem to share common ground: realism, preparation, duty. But here their paths violently diverge. The conflict is not political, it is moral. The confusion begins with language. Machiavelli's virtù sounds like virtue, but it is something entirely different. For the Stoics, virtue is the highest good. It is moral excellence itself, built on 4 pillars: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. Virtue is not a tool, it is not a strategy, it is an end in itself. To act virtuously is already to succeed, regardless of outcome. Machiavelli's virtù has nothing to do with this. His virtù is effectiveness. It is skill, boldness, adaptability, and when necessary, calculated cruelty. It measures not the quality of one's character, but the ability to impose one's will on events and people. Success, not integrity, is the standard. Epictetus would have immediately recognized the danger of this inversion. He warned, "Do not concern yourself with appearing to be a philosopher. Concern yourself with being one. For the measure of a philosopher is not his achievements, but the quality of his judgments." Machiavelli reverses this logic completely. The measure of his ruler is victory. Moral judgment becomes secondary, flexible, and expendable. This is where the infamous idea emerges: the ends justify the means. For a Stoic, this is not pragmatism, it is corruption. The means are the end. If you lie, manipulate, and destroy in pursuit of victory, you have already failed, no matter how impressive the result appears. The philosopher Isaiah Berlin identified this rupture as one of the most radical breaks in Western thought. He argued Machiavelli was not claiming that immorality is good. He was claiming that there are 2 incompatible moral worlds, one for individuals and another for states, and a successful ruler must choose the latter. Stoicism rejects this separation entirely. Virtue is universal. It binds the emperor and the slave, the leader and the citizen, in peace and in war. This is why Stoic heroes like Cato the Younger chose death over compromise. To Machiavelli, Cato was a political failure. To the Stoics, he was proof that power without virtue is worthless. Here, the verdict becomes unavoidable. Machiavelli teaches us how to win. Stoicism teaches us how to remain uncorrupted. And when winning requires becoming something you cannot respect, Stoicism demands that you lose. Number 5. The obsession with control and manipulation. At first glance, Machiavelli presents himself as a master of realism. But here, that realism quietly turns into illusion. His system is built on one central obsession: controlling how others perceive you. The ruler must appear merciful, faithful, humane, religious, and upright, even when he is none of these things. What matters is not what you are, but what people believe you are. Machiavelli states this with brutal clarity. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. This principle strikes at the very heart of Stoic philosophy. For the Stoics, reputation, public opinion, and external image belong entirely to what is outside our control. Building a life on perception is building it on shifting sand. The more you chase how others see you, the more enslaved you become to forces you can never master. Epictetus warned repeatedly against this trap. He taught, if you wish to be free, do not desire anything that depends on others. Machiavelli teaches the opposite. He trains rulers to depend entirely on others' beliefs. The Machiavellian leader becomes an actor trapped on a stage, terrified that the audience might glimpse what lies behind the mask. Marcus Aurelios, who lived under constant public scrutiny, fought against this same temptation. He reminded himself, soon you will have forgotten everything, and soon everything will have forgotten you. What remains for the Stoic is not image but character, not applause but integrity. Modern thinkers reinforce this divide. Ryan Holiday, in his analysis of ego and leadership, explains, "The ego is concerned with appearances. The soul is concerned with reality. One wants credit, the other wants truth. The Machiavellian ruler seeks credit. The Stoic seeks truth." This obsession with manipulation reveals a hidden fragility. A life built on appearances requires constant maintenance, constant fear, constant deception. It cannot rest. It cannot be at peace. Stoicism, by contrast, asks a single question: are your judgments sound? If they are, reputation becomes irrelevant. If they are not, no amount of image management can save you. What Machiavelli offers here is not mastery, it is dependence. And dependence, in Stoic terms, is another name for slavery. Number 6. Fear as a political weapon. Machiavelli's most infamous claim cuts straight to the core of his philosophy. When forced to choose, he argued, it is safer for a ruler to be feared than loved. His reasoning is cold and precise. Love depends on gratitude, loyalty, and goodwill, all of which are unstable. Fear, however, is sustained by the threat of punishment, and punishment, he believed, is reliable. Machiavelli concluded, "It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose." From a Stoic perspective, this is not merely a moral error. It is a philosophical catastrophe. Fear is a passion, a pathos. For the Stoics, passions are not tools, they are diseases of judgment. To build a political system on fear is to elevate a sickness of the soul into the foundation of power. Seneca, who lived under emperors who ruled by terror, understood this dynamic intimately. He warned, "He who is feared is himself afraid." A ruler who governs through fear can never be at peace. He must always anticipate betrayal, rebellion, and revenge. The fear he spreads outward returns inward, magnified. Stoicism seeks apatheia, not emotional numbness, but freedom from destructive passions. Fear-based power guarantees the opposite. It creates perpetual anxiety, suspicion, and isolation, both in the ruler and in the state. Plato, long before the Stoics, reached the same conclusion when analyzing the soul of the tyrant. The tyrant, enslaved by fear and desire, is the least free of all men. Modern psychology confirms this insight. Leadership research consistently shows that fear enforces compliance but destroys loyalty, creativity, and trust. Brené Brown captures this clearly. Power over people is not leadership. It is control. Fear may produce obedience, but it will never produce commitment. The Machiavellian ruler may secure silence, but never devotion. He may prevent rebellion for a time, but he cannot build stability. Fear corrodes everything it touches, including the one who wields it. From a Stoic lens, power rooted in fear is not strength, it is instability disguised as authority, and a system built on instability is always closer to collapse than it appears. Number 7. The final verdict, the dark teacher of power. The Stoic court now withdraws to deliberate. What emerges from this trial is not a caricature of evil, but one of the most unsettling minds in political history. Machiavelli was not ignorant of virtue. He was not blind to moral ideals. He simply chose to abandon them when they conflicted with effectiveness. The defense showed us a realist who dared to look at human nature without illusion, a strategist who understood the violence of fortune and the necessity of preparation. A patriot driven by desperation, willing to prescribe harsh medicine to a dying state. The prosecution, however, exposed the cost of that prescription. Machiavelli replaced virtue with virtù. He elevated success above character. He taught leaders to manipulate what they could never truly control: perception, reputation, and fear. In doing so, he built power on the very passions Stoicism sought to cure. Isaiah Berlin famously captured this fracture. Machiavelli was not choosing evil over good. He was choosing one vision of good over another, the glory and survival of the state over the integrity of the soul. For Stoicism, this choice is fatal. The Stoics begin where Machiavelli begins, with a sober diagnosis of reality. But where Machiavelli asks how to dominate the chaos, Stoicism asks how to remain uncorrupted by it. Machiavelli says, "Because the world is ruthless, you must become ruthless to survive." Stoicism replies, "Because the world is ruthless, you must guard your character even more fiercely." This is why Machiavelli is not a Stoic, but something more instructive. He is the anti-Stoic, the shadow that defines the light, the warning carved into philosophy itself. He teaches us what happens when intelligence is severed from virtue, when reason becomes a servant of power instead of a guardian of the soul. Machiavelli is not a guide to follow. He is a teacher to study, because by understanding his brilliance, we see with terrifying clarity what is lost when victory matters more than integrity. Machiavelli and the Stoics were diagnosing the same disease, a world ruled by chaos, fear, and ambition. They looked at the same reality and reached radically different prescriptions. Machiavelli offers power over others. He teaches how to manipulate, intimidate, and dominate the external world. It is effective. It works. And that is precisely why it is so seductive. Stoicism offers something quieter but far more demanding: power over oneself. Discipline instead of domination, integrity instead of control, inner stability instead of external victory. Both paths promise strength. Only one delivers peace. Here is the question this confrontation leaves behind. What kind of power are you truly pursuing? The fragile power that depends on fear, perception, and constant control? Or the unshakable power that comes from governing your own judgments no matter what the world does? Everything external can be taken from you: status, authority, reputation, even victory. But what you build within yourself cannot be seized by fortune. If this reflection stayed with you, subscribe to the channel and continue walking with our community. Let the Stoic Lighthouse guide you toward clarity, steadiness, and wisdom. In the next video, we will confront something far more intimate than political power, the invisible force that keeps most people chained to their past, long after the past itself is gone. True strength is not the ability to control others, but the refusal to be ruled by what lies outside your character. Until the next video.